Okay, this is on Hydroponics 101 rail system, I guess you'd say. And what this is this is vinyl fence post. You can buy it at Home Depot. It's 4 inches by 4 inches, and for 6-foot length, it'll cost you about $22. And then you'll need the caps for the end. Those are usually about $2 or $3 a piece. So you have about $25, $28 in a single rail. So the way you would do it, it's pretty simple. You would mark a straight line from one end to the other, and then space out your holes to how far apart you want them. There's no exact number as far as how far apart they want them. You want them. I think I put them probably about an inch apart, or about 12 inches apart spacing. So you would need a 3-inch hole saw, which will cut that hole for you, no problem. And you would just cut out all your rails, clean it just a little bit, and then that'll hold your net cup, it'll hold your plants. One thing you do want to be mindful of on your net cups though is some of them have really thin bands around them. Those really don't hold up very well. Where this one, and it's by Hydroponic Farms, is a little heavier duty, so it sits in there real nice. And it's just, well, you know, they're very inexpensive for these. You can get like 25 for, I don't know, maybe $10, $15 at the most. So they make them in white, black, it doesn't really matter. So on the side, so this would be where it would go from one rail to the next rail. Now there's different ways to do this. Some people will drill a hole in the bottom and have it drain through the bottom. I chose to do it on the side. So the water will come in this way, and then it will get to a certain level and then drain to the next rail, and then the same thing on the next rail. The reason that I decided to put it on the side, because sometimes we have power outages, and rather than all the water running out and probably overfilling my tank, and also possibly my roots running dry if the power's out for very long, this will keep this much water in it all the way across. So your plants will still be sitting in water, so you could probably be without power for a day or so and still not have a problem with your plants. There's 2 different ways to do these holes. Most people would recommend a 1-inch hole saw to do this hole. That's the way I originally did it. If you look at this hole, it's really rough, and you're going to have to put a grommet in there, and it's rough and unfinished. It's really more difficult. A better way to do it, if you have one, is a Forstner bit. And this is actually the Forstner bit hole here, and you can see that it's a much cleaner hole. And it's much easier to put the grommet in there. That's probably the part that I like the least, is putting that grommet in there and putting the tube in there. So put the grommet in there, and these are the grommets that I use. And if you just punch in that number right there, they'll come up. It's a 50 pack. It's only about $10, I think, for a 50 pack, maybe $11. So what I found works the best. And if you look at the grommet, you'll see the groove, and it's probably a little less than what the pipe is, so you got to get a little stretch. So what I found is if I use a little bit of coconut oil, it just makes things go together easier. So I'm going to do this before I put the cap, because I'll need to be able to work both sides of this. And you're basically just going to put that grommet in there so it splits the vinyl post. And you can feel it on the inside and make sure it's seated in there correctly so it will not leak. So the next part of the process is you're going to need a piece of PVC. And if you notice on this piece of PVC, I've grounded it down a little bit here on the edge. So it doesn't have that real hard edge. It almost gives me a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to get that in there. So same thing, we're going to get a little coconut oil on it. And then this is, like I said, is probably the worst. Is trying to get this on here without pushing the grommet through. So once you get it kind of started, and you're holding the grommet on the other side, kind of wiggle it. And that is actually watertight. So you will not have any water leaking out of this joint. And then on the inside, you can see it's just part way in there. And with the coconut oil, it'll just wash off, wipe off. It's not going to hurt the plants in any way. Okay, so the next step is gluing your cap on there. You'll notice I painted these. They're mighty thin, and you really don't want any kind of light going inside the rail. Excuse me. you don't want light on the nutrient solution because you can end up with algae. So what you would do is take like aquarium cement you'd use to put together an aquarium, and you're going to put a good bead all the way around, and then squeeze the cap on there. And then if you have any excess, you're going to rub it around to make sure you have a good seal on that. And you'll do the same thing to the other end on the cap. So, but before you put the cap on there, you want to make sure you at least put this on here. Nothing is glued, it's all dry fitted. So you're going to hold the inside and you're going to press that on there. So when you're connecting rails to rails, and I'll show that in just a minute, you can actually turn this, but it won't pull this out. Going in and out is not a good idea, but you can turn this to line it up with your next rail. And then glue your cap on there, and then you're pretty well set with the rail. So 1-inch Forstner bit is the way to go. On the other end of your rail, on your very first rail, you're going to have a place where the water comes in. So again, this is a 1-inch hole. You're just going to have an elbow, 1/2-inch elbow, with a piece on it, and this will go in here, and then your water will come in and then rotate or go down this way and then drop into the next one and then drop into the next one. I normally don't have a lot of slope to this. The amount of slope I would have at the most would be about a 1/4 inch. I'll put a 1/4 inch spacer in there and then get it to slope so it just drains just slightly. And that's about it for the rail part of it. Now, if you remember me talking about not allowing light in, these are little, they're actually made for, it's a 3-inch cap for ABS. So if you don't have a plant in here, you'd want to put a cap on there so you don't have light. One of the mistakes that I made that you could learn from is the water flows this way. This one here is really too close to the end. I mean, you can do it for new plants, but once they get going, what can happen is the line coming out, the roots can come in, fill this pipe, and end up clogging it. I've had roots that I'll pull out that are almost 12 inches long and wide around, so they can grow in here and fill that up. So if we go over to the actual one that's running, we'll go through it, but you can see where the water comes in right here. This grommet is not actually pressed in. There's no water that's going to leak out of here. So I put a grommet just on the top and push it down so it just kind of covers the hole, but there's no reason to have to fight with trying to put that off. And from time to time you may pull that off. So anyways, this is your top hole, comes into the rail, and I just made these to kind of hold them in place on this railing, but it's going to run down the rail. You can see there's a little bit of a slope to it, and then here you can see where the grommet is in there, and then my piece is already in there. So this connection here and this connection here, I would have pressed fitted this before I glued the caps on. So the only thing I have to do at this point is figure out my length and then press them together this way. If you really push this way or down, you could possibly cause a leak, but these are bone dry. So if you're looking at the rail, you can see where it comes out, it goes down, and it goes to the next one. So it's just a gravity feed into the next one. If you look at some of the plants, like this one's been in here since the first, big, healthy, full, the leaves are nice and dark, and then we got a nice root system going already. You look at this one that I just planted today, these are the same age, but this one I just put in the system today. So we don't have any roots coming out yet, and then it doesn't look as good, but it will in a week or so. So we follow it along, it comes back down to that, and then another one down here. And you can make these rails as long as you want. I normally do about 5 or 6 holes, but you can see how close I am here to the edge. I'll have to keep an eye on this, or just put new starts in the end ones each time, because these roots will get over here and they will grow all the way down into the next chamber. That's these were planted on the first in here, so that's actually 15 days worth of growth. And then we come down to the end, and if you notice, there's no hole on this side, and I put it on the opposite side, so the last rail drains over into the 2-inch pipe that runs back into the tank. And then I'll do another video on the tank, but this one's pretty much just on the rail.